from about 2000 onwards, I was doing a lot of work on swarm intelligence, which is a kind of related topic, not so sophisticated, but related, trying to understand how multi-agent systems operate, how birds flock, and so on. And we were using this to generate designs in the studio. Then around actually 2017, I think, I had a student at FIU, Jaime Tubella, who wanted to do a project on machine learning. And I was aware of the background of some of these things, but I was forced to actually find out more about it. And at the same year, I was commissioned to write an article on AI for a journal. And I began to realize that really the potential there was enormous. But in those days, no one was paying any attention to it, no one at all. In fact, in 2019, I teamed up with Zaha Hadid Architects, a very leading firm in London, and Google, and a few others, including Refik Anadol, to the idea of curating the British Pavilion at the Venice Biennale. And we didn't get anywhere. We didn't even get on the shortlist, and it wasn't so short either. It wasn't on the horizon. We had a dream team, an amazing dream team, but we didn't get anywhere. But I was still I could see that it was going to have a huge impact, and so I started working on it. I managed to get a contract with Bloomsbury. Bloomsbury are the publishers of Harry Potter books, and at first they were a little skeptical. Now they're blown away by AI, but they were a little skeptical, and not so many people out there were so convinced it was going to be so significant. I also got to guest edit an issue of Architectural Design, again on architecture and AI, and again had problems convincing Wiley that actually there should be an issue of this particular journal on this topic. So it wasn't so easy to convince people in the first place. And then, of course, things changed. And the public became aware of certain things. I think the two important ones were ChatGPT, where people suddenly realized what those of us working in AI already knew. And that is that you have a form of intelligence, shall we say, out there that was quite remarkable, and it could produce very convincing text. Also, Midjourney and DALL-E and all those what are called diffusion models that can generate images. We had some ways of doing this in the past, involving what we called GANs, generative adversarial networks. But these new things produced much better quality images, much more quickly, without so much work and without having to have any real technical knowledge of AI. So there was a kind of revolution that happened around the middle of last year, when suddenly these platforms came on board, and architects who have to be convinced by the visuals, I mean, they're not convinced by text, they need to see evidence of this, suddenly realized that these techniques could really produce something quite astonishing. And of course, it's since then, things have just rapidly changed, improved, because we're following, as it were, some version of Moore's law, where change in technology is exponential. So things are speeding up, and now everyone's talking about it. But if you go back to 2019, I mean, really, nobody was talking about that. And I would say that actually, even if we go back further, that in fact, the real revolution in AI happened about 2006, roughly. That's 50 years after the term itself was coined. The first 50 years produced very little, to be honest. And then all of a sudden, computers got much more powerful, much faster, we had much more data and so on. And those who'd been working on neural networks, which was an approach that had been overlooked, suddenly became to produce stuff that was really very, very convincing. So I don't know if you've been watching some of the recent events happening, but there's a guy called Geoffrey Hinton, very famous from the UK actually, who recently quit Google because somebody could speak out about AI. And he was the one who was really pushing neural networks quietly in the background. Everyone was ignoring him. Then all of a sudden, the technology became powerful enough that these things could suddenly do this amazing thing. So from 2006 onwards, all of a sudden, there was what we call this deep learning revolution, much more powerful AI. And it eventually fed its way into the visual arts around 2014, 2015, when people realized that you could actually use neural networks to hallucinate images. They were pretty unsophisticated at first, but they quickly got better. So it's a relatively recent history, very, very recent history.